The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Morning, Jamie.
Morning. You got your coffee?
I do have my coffee in, again, I'm going to keep using it, the NAS Atumwa mug, so that I'm so delighted that I found on eBay, because it's the only one I've ever seen, but for anybody watching, that's the symbol for NAS Atumwa. So, good morning, everybody. We're here with the Love Sweetie podcast. We've got three literally exciting letters. They moved quickly to go over. Two of them are going to be from Sweetie from the beginning of 1943. We're leaving 1942 behind. And then the third letter is actually, we're going to be checking in with Dr. Chester Demaree, out in Lacona, Iowa, as he's writing to his son Bob, who's in the military, serving overseas in the Pacific Theater. But before we get to all of that, something exciting has also happened with the podcast, which is photos have surfaced of Sweetie from Parsons College. So before we get too far away from the early 1940s, I thought it would be really, really great to bring the photos up on the screen so everybody could take a look at these. Now, when I say photos have surfaced, this is because another little treasure trove box of photographs, I was going through the family photos with my father. And I thought that there were only particular photos in there. And we had envelopes that were marked 1975, 1974. And I'm thinking, okay, these are documents from the 70s. And they're those big old accordion files, right? So it looks like the stuff where you would keep your tax paperwork and stuff like that. And I open it up and it's just bundles and bundles of photos from all different years. So it was just being used for something else. And I said, did you know these were here? And he indicated he did not. And so over the course of 2 nights, we were just looking through them all. I'm actually processing the whole collection. There's probably somewhere in the range of 700 to probably 900 photos. Of course, this is going to be across all of the years. And it includes a bunch of photos from the 1940s. But these stood out to me because the moment I saw them, I'm like, this is Parsons College. So let me bring them up on the screen just so everybody can enjoy these as well. And there's also a bit of a mystery being worked out with some of these photos. Okay, so this is the first one here, the group of the 3 girls. And what I love about this photo is we have 3 girls together. On the right is Sweetie with the locket. You can see her wearing the locket. And we also get to see the outfits of the time. We love looking at what they're wearing.
We love outfits. We love fashion.
Yep. And they're holding some packages. Now, the 2 girls on the left, I have my suspicion about who these 2 girls are. And I wish I could just ask my grandmother. I wish she was still with us, or I could ask her, who are these 2 ladies? And I wish I could just ask the 2 ladies who they are, based on the suspicion I have. But if they are who I believe they are, then they've passed away. But there's a way to work this out. And it's a bit of sleuthing. So if anybody's into genealogy, and you're trying to work these things out, one of the greatest things for this generation is by the 40s, there's a lot of availability of yearbooks for high schools. So when you're looking at college photos, if you can find the yearbooks, which are being made very, very accessible through various genealogical sites and through the school histories and things like that, you might be able to ID the faces. So if you already suspected somebody, and then you can look at potentially things like obituary records, photos of family members, things that have been posted, you can see things that are usually pretty distinct. Ears are pretty distinct. Noses are very distinct, sort of like the cheekbones and stuff like that. Unless now maybe that's going to be different in the future because there's a lot of plastic surgery that people do these days.
Yeah.
Not back then though. So if you can see that's a very distinct nose, or that's a very distinct facial structure that somebody has, and you can look at an old photo like this and you can say, okay, it matches up with this old yearbook, and you already have a lot of context for who probably everybody is. The thing I'm working on right now is I'm trying to reach out to a family member of one of the 2 girls, as I suspect who it is. And that's also something you have to be careful with how you're talking with people, because you're a stranger to them. They don't know you in the context. So I'm trying to also additionally verify this way, but I would say 95% certain that the woman in the middle is Marie Kilpatrick, and that the woman on the left, the taller of the 3, is Lucille Miller. And just having a photo and being able to see Lucille, because we've been hearing so much. We've heard about Marie, but we've heard so much about Sweetie and Lucille because they're rooming together, especially right now where we are with the letters in Ottumwa, that these are the two. And we can suspect now, if it was just one photo of three girls, we could say, okay, well, maybe that's just one photo of three girls. But wait a minute. There's another. So let me go to the next photo. And this is why, like, you know, when you see a collection, we've been reading through these letters about three girls together. Here's the next one. Same three girls.
Mm-hmm.
And on the left, taller, Lucille. Right. So, and this is, they're holding their books. They're probably coming back from a class or coming out of one of the entrances of the library there on campus. I'm going to suspect this is a classroom building, and I'll tell you why when we look at the next photo here. But this one's very clear. The first photo was a little difficult to make out some things. This photo, I think, is absolutely beautiful. I love the coats with the swoop. This lovely design.
And the hairstyles, like you can see like the distinct, like very far over side part. And Sweetie has, you know, she likes to get her perms.
Right, she does.
She does, so she has like a bit of a curl thing going on. Yep. And this is very typical of the time. So like this is a very popular hairstyle. So, and also it's short. Let's point that out as well. Like long hair is not something that you saw at this time. And actually I saw that, you know, getting into like war effort, hairstyle was part of that because longer hair was dangerous to work for women to work in factories.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, you could get caught in the machines and
so we have like that shorter hairstyle is a little bit more popular at this time in this year.
Yeah. But I just love the expressions on the faces. They're so
college.
Happy.
They're college.
They're having a great time. Yeah.
That's what they do. I mean, and then she, you know, from her letters, like these three were thick as thieves.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They were with each other all the time.
And then we thought, well, that's just two letters. Are you sure it's those three girls? Well, hold on a moment. It's not just three photos. I'm going to go to the third photo here, which happens to be the same three girls. So again, you know, this is all just showing up. This one, I love this photo. Let me see if I can.
It's such a candid shot.
Photo needs a little bit of cleaning on it for sure. But we have Lucille again in the back. Remember, Lucille's taller. And that's also another big clue. In the yearbooks where I was cross-referencing Lucille's face, she's always in the back row. Well, why would you be in the back when you're with your class? You're the tall one. You're going to be in the back. So it, you know, just more things shoring up my belief that Lucille's in the back here. And then we've got Sweetie Catherine on the right and the linked arms with Marie, who's been appearing in all three. This is also a very interesting photo because the building here, I am certain, is the library at Parsons. Because I was doing some research on Parsons to try to, you know, figure out the context of some of these photos. The library at Parsons, that building, from what I read online, doesn't exist anymore. But it was one of the Carnegie libraries. So there were grants that were sent out there. So there's a lot of old historic photos and the columns as well. This is a balcony in the back and the internal column lines up perfectly with the picture of the Carnegie Library that used to stand at Parsons. So this is the three girls coming out of the library. We can be certain of that, which is really great.
The pillars, like the columns, like you say, there's a lot of Carnegie because I live near Pittsburgh.
Right. Oh yeah.
And I used to pass by. I used to work in Oakland. So, and it's near Carnegie Mellon University. And this style is in fact, I believe
very Carnegie.
It was used as a background in the Batman movie.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I think it was the scene with the Dark Knight.
Yes, right? the scene where they're having the fight in front of like City Hall. Yeah,
with the columns and everything.
And those all of this just fits together.
It fits together, yeah. So I'm gonna see first of all if I can clean up this photo a little bit more. But then because they have such zoomed out imagery and there's a big project in Iowa going on to document the history of the Carnegie libraries there, I'm going to send them. Oh, hey.
Sorry. Somebody that got snuck in. I gotta go. Bye.
Bye.
She jumped up on my chair.
Yeah. Well, she wants to be a part of the podcast.
Okay.
Our first guest.
Oh, did you see her face? She's like, wait a minute.
What's going on here?
But I can definitely see how this would be. So this is the library at Parsons, and you know, they probably were studying and right.
It's
just such a lovely, right? It's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, And I'd like to send it over to that project, but because it's basically like an action photo, right? You actually see the college students coming out in the 40s. And the fact for that archives that's going through those projects to be able to identify the women in the picture is also really, really great. So, and then we have one more photo here. And this one is just of the two. And I wanted to end looking at these photos with this one because it's just the two. And this is Sweetie and Lucille. It has to be Sweetie and Lucille, which is a good lead in to, of course, our letters tonight because they're still rooming together in Ottumwa, since they've left Parsons College. And Marie had visited, but these two are together. So yeah, it's really great for these to have surfaced. I'm processing that entire collection. I was just looking through because when I was in grad school, I was doing some summer fellowship work at the archives at the University of Pennsylvania. So I have a little bit of an advantage with knowing how to deal with a collection that can be overwhelming. I would say like 700 photos from all the different years, and you're not sure who everybody is. Could be overwhelming to a lot of people. To a historian, it's like, oh my God, yes. But then you step back from it, you're like, okay, we got to figure this out, and how are you going to handle that project? So I was searching online to see how things have changed. Now, usually I'd be scanning everything in with a flatbed scanner, and making sure that everything was cropped a certain way. But I was watching this great YouTube video, and they mentioned an app called PhotoMine. Jamie, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but PhotoMine, it's PhotoMine, MYNE, all one word. And what it does is when you basically treat your phone like a scanner, it will automatically crop down. So if it's like you have a photo on a table, it'll crop it just to the photo. And it's going to use AI in an attempt to sort of enhance and sharpen some of the imagery. So it's really great with old photos. The other thing that's really neat, it has colorize options too. People have fun colorizing things. The other thing it does is some negatives are also in the collection. So they actually have their own light board, where you have the light down. And I immediately ordered it. It should be coming in this weekend. So you can put the negative on the light board and then scan with the app and it will produce the photo. So you can actually basically develop negatives, and they can do the same thing with slides. I love that ability. I love companies that make things very efficient. When I'm dealing with a collection of 700 photos, I'm just like, nope. It's either that, and plus I have all the documents. It also does scanning of documents and things. We have all the letters to deal with. So I'm going to be having a lot of fun. Now, I would bring up and hold some of these photos up for people, but when you're dealing with photos from the 40s and other documents and negatives, you got to wear gloves. So to anybody dealing with this, if you're at home and you're dealing with a similar collection, maybe you've just basically inherited a collection of old photographs, or you're the family historian and you're the one that's working on projects, check out this app. It's really great. I'm going to be working with it all weekend.
This is not an endorsement.
This is not an endorsement. I'm just telling people what I'm going to be using to process this collection. I haven't talked to anybody at PhotoMine, just to be very, very clear. But so far, it seems a really cool way to be able to handle processing a collection. Now, there's a lot of other things you want to do with that. Like you have to figure out storage. You want to figure out if you're going to have everything saved to hard drives and all that kind of stuff. But this app, I was stunned. And it just reminded me of all the work we had to use with flatbed scanners back at working at the archives just about a decade ago to where we are now, where basically you can do this in your home, which is really, really exciting.
And it's very fortunate for you, considering this giant collection that you have.
Right. Yeah,
well, and I'd like to point out that the sheer scope of this collection, the fact that you're still now finding things after having for a year, it's incredibly exciting. So now that you have a tool that we can use to organize things and display and show and go through, that's great. Great.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to more discoveries. We've got some fun photos coming up in some of the future episodes in the summer here. But I will leave them, of course, to those times. With that being said, just a couple of announcements. First of all, this episode's going to air right before the 4th of July holiday. So I hope everybody enjoys a happy and a safe and a fun 4th of July holiday. And also, I just wanted to give a quick shout out here again to my father. I know I did recently for Father's Day, but my father and my mother are celebrating the weekend this comes out, their 50th wedding anniversary. 50 years, the golden anniversary. So congratulations to my parents on making it to 50 years.
Yes.
So together, and then many more, hopefully after. All right, so let's get into today's letters. We're starting here with January 1943, and this is episode 10, by the way.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about
Can
that.
we just
We're in
talk about
double
that real quick?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
in episode 10, double digits.
double digits, made it to 10. There we go. January 13th, 1943. Navy Department, 120 North Holt, Bureau of Yards and Docks, Naval Reserve Aviation Base, Ottumwa, Iowa. I'm just going to pause right here. This is not the address of the Bureau of Yards and Docks. This is her home address, so she's making a joke here that the base is based out of her apartment.
Oh.
So I wanted to call this out for any historians who are like, well, here's the actual address of Ottumwa, or the people from NIS Ottumwa. Nope, this is a joke. This is a joke.
Your own birth. Okay, that's funny. She's funny.
Yeah. Dear Jean, at long last, all my wishing and hoping and everything. Doris Rabinold and I had made arrangements to go to a show on Saturday night after a light lunch in town, and then just casually drop by to the little Passion Pitto to see what was cooking. Well, in the afternoon, one of the married lieutenants, whose wife is not here, and who is a casual friend of ours, up and asked her to go with him to the officers' club for a little while. So our plans had to be considerably altered. We went shopping for Doris, a new dress, after we dawdled over our suppers. By the time we got the dress, it was time for her to meet the lieutenant, and rather than be a tar bucket, I decided that I'd go home and just go to bed. I went home and tried to clean up a few things, and then decided at 10:30 that I just couldn't stand to go to bed. So I got dressed again in just a sweater and skirt and decided that I'd amble down for a sandwich or something, and just casually drop into the pit. I stuck my head in and saw the crowd and decided, nuts, I wasn't going to stay down there by myself with all the drunks, and so I turned around and started out again, and somebody came up behind me and grabbed my arm. I turned around prepared to slug a drunk, and it was Indiana. He said, "You're not going, are you?" I said, "Yes." "I don't think I'll stay. It's too crowded, and there is no place to sit." Well, he said, "I'll look for a booth, and even if we can't sit, we can dance. Now, don't go away." And he came back very shortly and said he'd found a booth. So I went back and we stayed until they rolled up the bar, and then he walked me home. Made a date for the next night, and we went to see Ice Capade's review and something else. They were both good shows, and afterwards we went to the Pink Pig and sat and talked until about 11:15, and then we went home. He took me to the Navy dance and the Eagles Lodge last night. He came for me at about 9:15, after having called me to tell me he'd have to be a little late. It was the nicest dance they've had for the Blue Jackets, and the Navy band was really swell. He took me home, of course, and said he had to stand watch tonight until 12, but that he would call me in a day or two. I remember he said that once before, too. So, I'm trying to make my hopes and imagination behave themselves. Gee, I think he is just swell. You've watched him dance. You know how good he is, and how nice-looking he is. He has Indiana's slow, mannerly way. And I have so much fun with him that I sort of lose my bearings, I guess. I've been with him 3 nights in succession. Okay, I didn't want to interrupt her here because she's in quite a story.
I wanted to stop it so bad, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so Indiana.
Indiana, the nickname for whoever this is. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So he must be from Indiana.
Yeah. I mean, I would take it. Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because this reminds me of like the Zombieland movies where they just name each other where they're from.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that kind of hit me with it. But oh goodness.
Yep.
She has found somebody.
Yep.
And she thinks he's just swell.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love, there's a couple, just her lines here. Yeah. I love that rather than be a tar bucket.
Tar bucket, yeah.
The tar bucket line. Yeah, like, well, I'm going to be the draining of the party. I'm just going to be the party pooper. So back then, tar bucket.
She went home and then she was like, nah, I'm going out. Like, yeah. And at 30, she was,
it's good night.
I've been there. And she did, and then look what happened.
Right. I just love also, she's like, oh, there's too many drunks about. I'm going to slug a drunk. Like, what is it she said? Yeah, I'm prepared, like, if you're starting any nonsense. And then there's this guy, and she's like, oh. And then she winds up going out. What I also think is really funny is she made the date for the next night. They went to see Ice Capade's review and something else. She rarely forgets what she watched. And the fact that she can't remember, she wasn't paying attention to whatever else was going on.
She is smitten.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
it's clear, like, definitely this was a I'm getting it
Yep.
all out.
Mm-hmm.
It just it's a
Yep.
very exciting.
Yeah, and what was in a previous episode, there was a letter where she's like, I'm digging my pit and I'm going to push someone right inside. This, to me, is that moment, right? Where she's like, oh, I'm going to dig my pit. And the funny thing is, the place is called the Pit.
The pit.
So,
there's no coincidences.
right,
I mean,
yeah.
but there's no coincidences.
Yeah.
I love that. This is how it happens. This is how you meet that person.
Yeah.
And I mean, and it just,
Yeah.
I love it. I love love. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep going because there's more.
See how it happens. Yep. I found out Sunday night that I can have that little apartment that Lucille and I were going to move into once before. She's not going with me, but I'm moving into it alone, and I'm loving every thought of it. I bought a little coffee table down at W.T. Grant's and Company for an added pleasure. You know, it wouldn't possibly be a very good or expensive one at such a place as that, but it was pretty nice looking, and it will be something new and different. All right, and just a brief note here. So she's been living with Lucille, and the plan's going to be, okay, they're about to go independently at this point. And she's at the point, I think, financially where she can, because she's got that swell job at the base.
Yeah. And she has the Corys taking care of her.
Yep.
She has those, she has somebody to like help her get there and come back.
Yeah.
So she's saving money that way. And I love that this is that moment. This is I am on my own.
Right.
And this is all mine. And it's just like, that is a turning point. That's a moving up into adulthood. And so she's loving it. And I just love this for her.
And it's things like, she's just excited she bought a coffee table. Like, I remember, there's the phrase adulting, right, that we have. And it's like buying certain items. I remember when I first really had my my one-bedroom apartment that I lived in for quite a long time, but it was after college. I'd really moved out. I was working full-time, and I was so excited to buy my first, like, sofa on, like, a credit card and then pay it off completely. Like, I bought this, and it is good quality. And it's not, like, the best ever, but it's good, and it wasn't just buying a futon at college,
And it's yours, and you paid
and it was mine,
it.
yeah.
Like,
and it was
and
really
like
exciting.
you said, that's just a coffee table, a little coffee table, just an added little pleasure.
But yeah.
She's indulging herself in these things because she deserves it.
Yep.
She has worked hard to get to where she's at, and I think she appreciates this too. And it's, again, we go back, and I've brought this point up before. When you're writing letters and you're reflective and you can like see where you're at and you can like go back onto what you wrote and to like, think, she deserves this.
She does.
So I'm so happy for her.
I'm so happy for her. Yeah. I'd give almost anything I have to have the big lamp you have. I need it very badly, since all they have is overhead lighting that is none too good. Could you do without it? I know how nice it is, and how much pleasure it can give you, but there's the problem of getting it down here, too. Could you find some way to send it to me? Call the express company and see if they'll call for it. Pack it and send it down. I'll pay the bill when it gets here, or you pay it, and I'll send you the amount it takes. I need it so badly, Jean, and with a chance that Indiana just might come back, I want it to be just as nice as it can be. Will you help? I need some little silicets, too, anything that you think would be nice. I've wanted it as badly, and now I'm just crazy to get it fixed up nicely, and the lamp is my first thought. I have, as I said, bought the little coffee table. There's another little table, a Davenport and chair, and an old antique, like the chair Mary and Bill got from Mrs. Bolton, and an old... I'm going to try to find a chair, either have as second-hand, easy chair, and an end table. I'll have to get some dishes. You couldn't send me some of your swiped ones from the cafeteria, could you? And silicets, no idea what she's trying to reference here. I looked it up. It's not an old term for anything. So if any of our listeners has an idea of maybe what she's trying to intend, and there's a clear spelling error here, you know probably just as much as we do right now. But you know what I love? The lamp.
Oh, she needs that lamp. She's like, Jean, I need your lamp. Give me your lamp, Jean. Which is funny. I mean, I can see that, like, but she's really, I like how she's like, kind of like, Jean, Jean,
Yeah.
do you need that lamp? Jean, can you give
Yeah.
me that lamp? And
Right.
and it's just she's excited. She wants to make it nice because she wants Indiana to come see how nice she can make her house.
Right.
Like,
She wants to
look at
catch Indiana.
look at how nice I make my house. Wouldn't you like to live there?
Mm-hmm.
In a place where I am at fun and with
Yep.
this nice lamp? And I'm guessing that that sounds kind of like maybe like a window dressing.
I think probably something there.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, just the way, you brought up the thing that I was thinking of, which is, Jean, can you do without the lamp? Oh, and you're gonna have to figure out how to send it. You should call this company to send it. If you can't call this company, you can pay the bill, or I'll pay you back. Like, so
But
it's not just like, hey, can I have a lamp?
She's like,
here's how we're gonna deliver.
Nice. I'm gonna get that lamp. And she's operating already on the assumption.
The assumption's already there. This lamp is mine.
Yeah. So she's got Jean's lamp. So we have to see. Does she get the lamp? I have a feeling she will.
I think Jean's gonna cave. So I've got to write to Mom and ask her for 2 full-size sheets, since the ones I had at school are too narrow to be used as the underneath sheet. I can use the small ones on top. With the bedding I had at school retrieved from Miller's, I'll be set, except for a few things. There was the radio, of course, that caused a little controversy, and we decided to draw straws, short to win. I won, but when she started to cry, I decided I'd let her have it and try to find another. I'm still trying.
Didn't Lucille carve her initials into the radio anyway?
Yep. In a previous letter. So, well, now it's your radio, Lucille. There you go.
Oh, fine. I like that. Well, she's not thinking about radios. She's got lamps on the mind.
Right. Yeah. She's like, I don't need the radio right now. I've got other stuff I'm working on. So I've got to write to the folks about the sheets and things, so I better close. If you can do so, you could probably have the lamp packed and shipped so that I could get it in time for this weekend. And the reason I want it so badly is that it does so much to dress up a room, and I have hopes and sort of a feeling in my bones that Robbie will call. Wish me luck. Could you come down and see me? I promise I'd be at the bus. Love, Sweetie. Yeah, and I think Robbie is Indiana. So I think that's the name of Indiana.
Robbie.
Yeah. Robbie.
And she's like, I really need that lamp, Jean. So I think Jean's any kind of sister, she's going to send her that lamp.
Yep. Absolutely. And then, of course, we have a letter coming from Sweetie 9 days after this letter. So let's go into the letter here for January 22nd and see if we get a continuation of the story with the mysterious boy named Indiana.
Ooh.
January 22nd, 1943, Ottumwa, Iowa. Dear Jean, I'm sorry I've delayed again in writing. I had to write to David. I think he's doomed to go across with his squadron. All leaves and passes and furloughs have been canceled, and he had a pretty heavy case at the Blues when he wrote, so I thought I should write to him. Okay, so David Chase is still in contact.
Well, and he's very sad. It sounds like he's getting deployed. So.
Yeah, so she might not be writing consistently to him or responding to his marriage proposal by mail a year earlier, but even she's like, okay, if he's going to go overseas, I'm going to write him a nice note. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad.
I also got a letter from Maida, wonder of wonders, but I don't know what to think of it. She's a pretty clever girl, and I wonder if she might be soft-soaping the entire family. She might, on the other hand, be actually trying to cultivate an acquaintance. I guess that's my suspicious mind. I shall send the letter if there's room. Yeah, so Maida is engaged to Frank. And she likes Florence. Yeah.
Yeah, she likes Florence, but she's a pretty clever girl, and I wonder if she might be soft soaping. I mean, I'm guessing probably like pulling the wool over their eyes, or I don't know. But then she wrote that, and she's like, well, she might, on the other hand, might be actually, I don't know.
Like just trying, yeah.
I think she like I said, I think she's just a little suspicious of this because, this is also the last sibling to get married. So and that leaves her.
Yeah, for the brothers.
Yeah, so it'll be both her brothers and her 2 sisters. Well,
Well, Jean's not married yet. Yeah.
Not married yet, but she does have some brown eyes that she's...
Yeah, she's thinking about that guy named Bob. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, of course. And then now we have another Bob. Do we have another Robbie?
Robbie,
Oh,
yeah.
goodness.
Very similar names, right? Yeah.
It's so funny. But yeah, I would have told her that if I was talking with her now and be like, listen, I think maybe you're allowing yourself to make these assumptions that are not true. You don't know about her. But I think she's there and she knows that thing. So I would love to hear what David had to write to her and what she had to say to him too.
Yeah.
I feel bad like that.
Yeah. She's still carrying on a correspondence there with David. So it's like David's just the reserve in the background that she's friends with. She clearly cares about him as a friend. But it's clearly on her side. If David's interested in something else, this is very one-sided because it's clear that she's only considering him an acquaintance at this point. And then I just love the phrase, I guess that's my suspicious mind, because my mind just started playing in my head that Elvis song, Suspicious Minds.
Oh gosh, I've never heard it. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, yeah, definitely. When you get a moment, at some point this weekend or in the coming weeks, listen to some classic Elvis. That's one of his greatest hits, I'd say, is Suspicious Minds. We can't go on together with suspicious minds. Now, it has to do with, like, relationships probably between a guy and a woman, and not the case here. This is obviously about family. But the minute I see the phrase suspicious mind, it always goes to, in my mind, to Elvis. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, but yeah. So this is 9 days after her last letter, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Let's see if she talks some more about the lamp.
Yep.
There we go.
I do need the lamp, Jean, and quite badly, too. The rug and the Davenport and chair are quite nice. I got a new chair, and now I need lamps. You know what lamps can do for a place, and I'd sure like for them to do it to mine. I like the place very much, and better as time goes on. I do at times get a little lonesome, but I stop to read a story or find a little work to do, and it's soon gone. I spent last Sunday scrubbing, cleaning, waxing, etc. It really did look nice. And I suppose I might as well add I spent the greater part of this week trying to recover from Charlie Horse. I do want the lamp very much. I think if you'd call transfer companies, you might find one of them coming down, and they'd bring it along quite safely and reasonably. As soon as it comes, and the one from home comes, and I buy a little wall lamp to go by the dresser, I'm going to have open house or open apartment or something.
Jean, send the lamp.
Jean,
this is on her mind.
Jean, Mom's already sent me one. Why aren't you sending me one? And and I like too how she's like, so I'm assuming that she has a Charlie horse, like she got a Charlie horse or something, which is awful. But but she she's like getting settled. Here's my little apartment, and of course she's making it her own, and of course she likes it, and she needs that lamp, Jean.
Yeah. The other thing is she hates chores to this point, and she's like, I was scrubbing and waxing and cleaning everything. I love that feeling. Like, I moved more recently, and it's that idea that you're in this new space and you just want to keep it for as long as possible, as if it's like you just moved in, right? So she's in that mood of, got to keep this nice and tidy.
Oh yeah, I just got a new car, and I'm like, kid, clean up your trash.
Nobody do anything.
Everybody, you get all your stuff out. Yeah, because you wanted to keep it nice. And and of course, she's making this hers. Yeah. This is her little time. And I think that she really missed a golden opportunity to say, I like the place very much and better. At times I do get a little lonesome, but then I stop to read a story. It sure would be nice to have a lamp so that I could have some light so I could read some more story. Really, she missed her opportunity. But I wonder... this is 9 days later, and she wanted that lamp for that last weekend.
For the guy, yeah.
Yeah, so... so let's move on.
See what happens, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had fun at the dance. Hilma sounded quite enthusiastic, and told you the dates I'd had with Indiana, but now they've moved out into the barracks, and so I guess that takes care of that.
Wah. So
Aww.
It was a fun little time. The guys have to get to work. They're in the Navy. So Yeah, they've left. They've gone to the barracks. The barracks are up, and the barracks are built at this point. This gives us a timeline because the base was still being worked on. The barrack buildings are now up there, so the guys are now out of town, which means they're not about as much.
Yeah, so she can't go on her dates.
Yep, it sounds like it might be a little fast-paced thing that might be over.
The scarcity of men and all the staying at home do is wearing me down, but fast. Letter writing has always just about bored me stiff, and so I avoid that as much as possible. I guess I'll have to drip down to the 5 and dime to buy some embroidery hoops. I need some dainty little thing anyway for tables, etc. I've always had a sort of knack for that anyway. Except that the lighting is none too good, hint hint. I shall have to stop at the library and pick up some good books.
Yeah, so I just love that she says letter writing bores her, and I've never seen a bigger collection of letters survive.
I know. Actually, when I read these letters, I write little notes in the margins, and I wrote question mark, question mark. I was like, you could have fooled me.
Right, yeah. You're pretty good at this.
You're pretty good. Yeah, I think that maybe that was just she's getting tired of doing that. She's bouncing around in her house now. Now that Indiana...
Right. Is it the barracks?
Yeah. But so she's kind of bouncing around in her house, and she needs that damn lamp.
Yeah. And she needs a hobby outside of things. So she starts to look at embroidery. When I knew my grandmother and the things that she has left behind, we haven't gotten into some of these artifacts yet because they come up in later letters and things, but she does become very adept at sewing, embroidery, knitting, all these sorts of things. So she's indicating here she's pretty good at this. She is pretty good at this. This is going to turn into a whole bunch of things all the way into the future. But some of these items that she made, they have survived. So imagine sort of like the napkins where you have the embroidery, right, that's done on it that you can put on the table. She was doing all that kind of thing. And she obviously had this skill this early. And when she's saying, I have to stop at the library and pick up some good books, it's either for reading or it could be more books about the embroidery that she wants to be doing for the skill to do that.
Mrs. Corey was operated on Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. The tumor proved very large and fibroid. She took cold a day later and has had quite a lot of trouble, what with coughing and the danger of pneumonia. She's had so many nice flowers, I can't decide what I should do, but thought I'd wait until she was to come home before I bought anything. Then the first flowers will all be gone, and mine will have central notice. Sly old fox, aren't I? I think it would be fine for us to go to Frank's and Maida's wedding, don't you? I wish you would come down whenever you can. I'd like to have you see the apartment, and we'd be where we could do as we pleased. I promise I'll not forget to keep my wits about me, too. Write soon, and come down if you can. I'd sure appreciate the lamp. Love, Sweetie.
I like how she threw that last one in there.
Yeah, hey, just in case you forgot from my last 2 letters and all throughout this letter, I need the lamp. But outside of that, yeah, we've got some stuff going on with the Corey family. Obviously, Mrs. Corey's sick. She's on recovery. And then she's indicating her timing of sending some flowers. And then we get the note that, she'd like to get to Frank and Maida's wedding. So
they definitely are getting married.
Yeah. Yeah.
This after the happening.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Despite she would go too. So that's nice. That's nice. I mean, it's not these weddings at this time. It's not an event where you're able to make it. It's like this is right. We're getting married. We have to get married because the husband's getting deployed.
Yep.
So the fact that they'd be able to go is really nice.
Right. And this is also, remember, Maida's parents did not want Maida to marry Frank during the war. That's right. In the previous episode. So that's clearly been scheduled. So congratulations to Frank and Maida for moving forward.
Congratulations. I did make a little note, and it was like a little wow. I was like, oh.
Yep, there it is.
We're so used to now. It's funny. I do use emojis quite a bit, when I react to things.
Right, and we're so used to that.
What do I write? I want to make the emoji.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really glad. I'm really glad for Frank and Maida because he wasn't enamored. From what it sounds like, he was totally smitten in love with her. Yeah. Oh, that's really nice, and it's nice that they'll be able to go. But I'm a little bit. I want to see this lamp. This
Yeah,
has
I bet
got
they do.
one heck of a lamp.
Maybe in this photograph collection, maybe I'll spot some various lamps and be like, maybe it's this one, or maybe it's that one, or maybe
At this point, it must be made out of solid gold or something. I don't know.
she really wanted that lamp.
She
Yeah.
really wants a lamp, and she can't. She needs Jean's lamp. But I'm going to be interested to find out, and I think our listeners will too if she ever does get that lamp.
Yep, I think so. And then our final letter for today is going to be, we're checking in with Chester here, who's writing to Bob at the front, and this is coming from February of 1943.
Ensign Robert C. Demaree, VP 23, care of Postmaster, San Francisco, California, February 6, 1943. Dear Bob, it has been about 2 weeks since I wrote you, owing to the fact that I've been quite busy and have had so many extracurricular things to do. I hope that this letter reaches you soon, as you will probably be needing it. We suppose that you are somewhere in the vicinity of the war clouds that are now gathering around Guadalcanal, and which is to be the supreme test. If you are, we hope that your luck more than holds, for we sense that the conflict is great.
Can you give us some context?
Yeah, for Guadalcanal. So, we've had an episode here where we're looking at what's going on at home, and it's as if life is just proceeding as if it were any day. And then we're shockingly brought back into the present, which this is World War II, right? And she has her brother Bob, who's in the Pacific Theater. So with regards to Guadalcanal, so Guadalcanal is the name of a campaign. And when we're talking about theaters of operations and we're talking about campaigns, it's usually a series of battles going on. Now, my main preference for studying military history is the Civil War. So when we talk about a campaign, we're talking about like the Eastern Theater. We're talking about like Grant's Overland campaign in 1964. And usually these things last for a number of months. In World War II, we're talking about the Pacific Theater or the European Theater. So that's the first thing, is we always want to keep track of what side of the war people are really on. And I think you can say North Africa, the work in North Africa, if you've like seen the movie Patton, there's a difference in the European theater if you're deployed in like sort of the forces around that area and the people going into Europe. When you're dealing with World War II in the Pacific, we're dealing with items like the Guadalcanal Campaign, which is going on for many, many months. And it's going to be also actions taken by the Navy, actions taken by the Marines and the various service branches of the United States military. So Guadalcanal is in the Solomon Islands. And the Solomon Islands, if you imagine a map of the world and you look at Australia on that map, and you look at the islands east of Australia, right? Because you got New Zealand below to the southeast. If you go like directly east from Australia, that's the Solomon Islands. It's that series of islands right there. So, and you can actually, if you think about it that way, it's pretty far from Japan, right? Because you're down by Australia. This is the Solomon Islands. That's where Guadalcanal is. And there's all these actions around here. And the Japanese are holding Guadalcanal. There is going to be a major breakthrough with the combined forces of the United States in the fall of 1942 with the Navy, the Marines, and the other service branches there. It basically is going to get the Japanese out finally of this area. And why is that important? This is really seen as the turning point of the Pacific Theater in World War II, is Guadalcanal. Because once the Americans, it's at least one of the turning points, once the Americans are going to establish that they can get the Japanese out of this area, then the Japanese are going to start to be overwhelmed with the resources of America. This is actually, there's a lot of parallels to the Civil War here, and that's where my strength is. But just sort of to give you an idea, you might have some superior strategy at times in war, you might have some superior generalship. When you were dealing with like the Eastern Theater in the Civil War, the Union Army's having a lot of problems for the first 2 years of the war with things. And surprisingly, it's actually quite surprising how long the Confederacy was able to survive if you look at the comparison to American history. But you've got an army that hits a turning point, and then things start to really go downhill for them because they're facing the overwhelming force and the resources and the ability to resupply of the other side. In the case of World War II, we got surprise attacked, right? Pearl Harbor. So there's going to be a reaction point. There's going to be a point where we're rushing to get things done. But what's happening, what we're seeing now is in America, we see things are getting better organized. Things are running stronger. Things are running more efficiently. And there's a superior ability to mobilize resources. When you're up against that, it's going to be tough and overwhelming to fight back. Once you hit that turning point, it's amazing. These guys keep going for a while. The Japanese are going to go until late 1945, right? But there's going to start to be a decline simply because they're up against overwhelming ability that's just going to get better and better and better. This happened in the Civil War. This happened when especially Grant came east. Eventually, it's going to be overwhelming. Right. So I think what we're seeing here in World War II is, in the case of the Japanese versus America, we have Imperial Japan fighting extremely modern, tons of resources, ability of the United States. I think what we're seeing is the US is getting better and better and better. And the Japanese are staying where they are, but it's hard to fight that tide once it comes. In Guadalcanal, and the success there by this point is going to represent that turning of the tide. And there's still going to be a lot of conflict in the future, and it's going to be horrible. But we're seeing where things are going to go. So I hope that kind of gave some context of how, we get to turning points. This is a turning point. So, and you can see Chester saying, we sense the conflict is great. You kind of get this like, this is a big fight here. This is going to be a big difference. Mm-hmm. So.
We received your souvenirs Saturday, February 6th, and appreciate them very much. I was intrigued, as our company commander used to say, concerning the perfume that was on the red silk cloth that you sent us. And if you're able to run across anything again like it, I would appreciate it if you would make mine a bottle of the heaviest you can find. Perhaps those little brown people take to heady scents better than we do in this country at the present time. However, I think that I can remember the time when we had quite a variety of those on hand to choose from ourselves. The weather here is somewhat warm for this time of the year, and the snow is about gone again, and the roads are not what one would like to be if he were trying to practice medicine or carrying the mails. I have had to make some long drives, but so far have been able to get there.
Yep, so we're heading into February. Clearly, Chester's getting some items from the front from Bob. Mm-hmm. Some interesting pieces. He's commenting on the perfumes. Chester's like a naturalist, right? He's interested and intrigued by all of what he's seeing. So, and smelling, apparently.
And smelling.
Yeah.
Frank is still in Florida, but seems to think he'll be leaving there for some more warlike assignment. He states that he expects to take time off and get married before he leaves. I don't see how we'll be able to get away with the prospective work we have on hand for the remainder of this month in March. We would have to go to Chicago, and it would take us about 3 days to do this, besides the cost of the trip, and to say nothing of the uncertainty of railroad travel in this country at the present time. Troops and soldiers on leave almost monopolize the trains and other modes of transportation these days.
Yeah, and this is really interesting, too.
Yeah. It takes 3 days to get from Iowa to Chicago.
Yeah. And these states are next to each other. Right?
It's funny to me because, I hear sometimes it's like in Europe, mm-hmm. I saw a tweet or something. This woman was saying, like, we don't visit our family too much because they're like 45 minutes away. I'm like,
yeah, that's unthinkable.
My mom is 4 hours away from me. If my mom was 45 minutes away from me, I would be there literally every day.
Yeah.
Like that, no. It blows my mind. So it's just so funny to like think about having to go to a wedding. He's like, it's going to take us 3 days to get there. And he's like, we can't do that. We've got too much too much we got to do. And then also the cost.
Yeah.
Like God only knows how much that is. It's probably like $3 or something like that.
Yeah.
But the troops and the soldiers, they're all,
all over the trains.
This is where we're at in the country. Like we got people on leave. We got people probably going to get married. Mm-hmm. People, troops also probably moving to different bases and whatnot and going to places. that's where they're at. That's where we're in the thick of it. It's wartime. And I think about being in this too, and like we'll see more in this letter about living in this world. It's kind of scary that was their culture, and then like where we're at now with what the condition of the world and like the wars that are going on. And
yeah,
I'm sorry, this just it breaks my heart.
Right.
It breaks my heart because you shouldn't have to get married on the fly like this, and then and your family's not going to be there.
Right.
And this is the world that they're in right now.
Yeah. And then just with travel, and I wanted to bring this up, there isn't even a question in Chester's mind that he's going to use his car and drive to Illinois. There aren't as many cars on the roads. Rail travel really is the way people are massively moving around the country. And when I went out last year, my dad and I did that round trip to Des Moines. One thing that we did is I like to see other states too. So I'm going to pack as much as I can into each trip. And we went southwest through Lacona, and then we went to Kansas City. Kansas City is a really interesting town, and it was really funny because I kept trying to figure out, I don't follow sports too much. Like, I root for my home team. If you're near Philly, you kind of have to, right?
Yeah,
so
I get it.
But this was Kansas City.
But okay.
Yeah. So, well, no, I don't. Not okay. See, Pennsylvania has an issue for all the people outside Pennsylvania, right? Because we have two teams that are very, I would say, religiously followed within Pennsylvania.
Go Steelers.
Eagles. Right. And we have to be loyal to our teams. But I was in Kansas City, right, in Missouri, and when I walked into the hotel, there was like these. I couldn't understand why everybody at the desk, they're like, "Oh, where are you coming in from?" When you're checking into the hotel, I said, "Oh, from Philadelphia," and they're like, "Oh, sorry." And I was like, I don't get what they're saying here. And then I get into like the elevator, and I see something about like Andy Reid, and he used to coach the Eagles, of course, and I was like. It took a while, right? Because again, I'm not a big sports fan, but it finally did connect, and I'm like, oh right, they beat us at the Super Bowl. So they're all thinking it's funny, like, oh, Philadelphia is visiting Kansas City. I'm like, I don't know what the big deal is. And then I was like, oh right, the Chiefs, right? Andy Reid, the Chiefs. We just lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs. So I found it funny. They found it funny I was visiting, but I have to be honest, Kansas City is a beautiful, beautiful place to visit. And one of the amazing things, they have two really big, amazing sites that you have to see if you go there. One is the National World War I Museum, which is not in Washington, D.C. Almost all of these museums are in Washington, D.C., but that was built in Kansas City because when it was built, which it was built before World War II, the country wanted to put it in a central location. And because Kansas City was such a hub, they wanted to make sure people from the West and people from the East, again, thinking that the railroad travel, could access it. So it's put in Kansas City. It's an unbelievable museum. You have to go there. And it's right next to the other giant place you have to go to, which is Union Station. Union Station has been preserved. The terminals of where all the trains were coming and going. It's one of the biggest hubs. So I have to imagine that most of the trains that Chester would take from probably Des Moines heading to Chicago, they're going to be coming by way previous to that out of Union Station, just to give some volume of the troop movements here. So the traffic at Union Station in Missouri, just south of Des Moines, is 100,000 people a day in the 1940s. Can you imagine? We think about like New York with this kind of volume, just because I think it's very important to understand the volume of traffic here. 100,000 people a day. Think about travelers. 100,000 people a day going through Union Station in Missouri.
Let's think about this too. All done like manually by people who had to know what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, just that the stress of that job, I can't even imagine.
Right. So when Chester's saying,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. Like when Chester's saying the trains are monopolized, imagine 100,000 people a day going through Missouri just south of where Chester is. You could have a full train that's passing through Des Moines. It can't even stop, right? Because it needs to get on to where it was going. And even if it did stop and a few people get off, you've got all these people trying to get on the trains, it's just so difficult. So that's why he's concerned he might not make it to the wedding.
We have been to Lizzie's a few times since writing you, but we will have to stay home more and more on account of the general curtailment of essential materials and limitations of travel. We hope that the enemy will soon be crippled enough that we'll be able to have some definite idea of the termination of the war. Things are looking better all the time in Europe. It is certainly wonderful what the Russians are doing to the Germans, and I would not be surprised if something phenomenal would happen at any time. We're able to sense that your side of the war is much better than it was even a few months ago, and we are glad of that. However, the German U-boats are about the real unsolved problem that the United Nations has to contend with at the present time. It seems that more and more men are to be drafted than we thought would be when the selective service went into effect. Married men, even with children, will be called into service within the next 6 months if present plans go into effect. There are many restrictions being imposed. Today we had a special bulletin announcing that shoes were to be rationed. However, present prospects seem to assure us that we'll be able to secure 3 pairs of shoes per year. I don't think I've ever purchased 3 pairs of shoes in 1 year at any time before.
Yeah, then we get to the rationing of the wartime. A couple things here. The draft and rations. And oh my gosh, I can't believe in 2024, one of the biggest conversations going on right at this moment in politics is the selective service, is the draft, because of, I think, the bill that's going through Congress at the idea of women being drafted. You know, there's a bunch of other things going on, the automation of selective service and things like that. But here we are back in 1943. This is active wartime, and this is what it's like. More than expected are being drafted within the next 6 months. He identifies there's a turnaround in the Japanese theater, but there's a big problem with U-boats, with the submarines from the Germans. And then shoes, you know, things that we wouldn't expect to be rationed are being rationed because of the raw material, I'm sure, more than just the shoes. And the shoes themselves, if they're already produced, they have to get them to the soldiers. Shoes always seem to be a big point with the military, that they need to have enough of those. And this also, I know I made these Civil War analogies earlier, but shoes tend to be in big demand from these armies moving around. They wear out the fastest, right? So the fact that they're rationing the shoes in Iowa, of course, then Chester says, I usually don't buy 3 pairs a year. So he's just, he's good. But I mean, you can see the effect that this is going to have on the people.
Well, I mean, but I think too, like the parallels between, like you said, now, like our current time, that selective service is being something that has been floated around, and I think that the general consensus in America is that we are not for this.
Right.
This is something that is actually that is causing a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to say personally myself, I think it's BS.
Yep.
And I'm going to go ahead and own that opinion, but back then, I think that, and this is something I would love to get your perspective on. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor,
right? I
think that it brought forth this feeling of, oh no, you didn't.
Right, we're gonna go. We're going over there. Yeah.
We're like, oh yeah, we're gonna, and I think that we all know that it did really not bode well for Japan.
Yeah.
They awoke the beast.
Right.
And so, but I think that time, America was, and the people, the citizens of the United States were more like, yes, we are going to do what we can and contribute to the war effort. So having selective service, I don't think that they had, and even though people might have been against it, there probably wasn't much talk about that publicly. Like you couldn't state your opinion that, oh, I'm against this, because it's your duty. It was your duty to your country. And we are much different.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's interesting how these wars go. So we have to talk a bit about, the history of conscription with the United States. We look at conscription in the United States, and again, we go back to that Civil War. Almost everything from modern society, because this is really the thing about Civil War history. When you look at the history of the country, you have the first 80 years after the American Revolution, and you have these United States. And then after the Civil War, it's the United States. That's the switch, right? And you can mark in time a ton of stuff that's permanently moving forward after the Civil War. When Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address calls this the new birth of freedom, and he's talking about sort of the second, this is the reset of the country. This is when we're really formed. I see this is the fully formed United States is forming in that moment in 1863 in November at the dedication of that ceremony, that cemetery at Gettysburg. And when you get into 1863, you have the draft going on. Now, interestingly, the Confederacy drafted first. So for all the libertarians out there that are talking about secession and some interesting concepts, you should look to your history books. It's very interesting that the one founded on states' rights, based on what they said, conscripted first. But the Union's also then going to conscript. So we see the drafts running as early as the Civil War. Now, America is never going to sustain the rate of the number of men going into the military that we had back in the 1860s. To this day, it's just unmatched. It's unmatched. When you look at the casualties alone, and I do have the statistic from Iowa here because Iowa actually has a record with the Union Army. But when you look at the casualty rate alone in the South, the casualty rate is 1 in 4 able-bodied men in the South is going to be the casualties of the American Civil War. And in the North, it's 1 in 5. America has never sustained that since that point. So that's why the numbers are so big. Now, Iowa has a very specific number to call out here. In the Union Army, Iowa was a Union state. More than 50% of their able-bodied men that could fight in the Union Army fought in the Union Army. They're the highest percentage enlistment of any state in the Union. That's why if you go to the Iowa Capitol building today, because we visited the Capitol building. If you go to your state Capitol buildings, they're free tours. They're amazing. You get a lot of information. But I remember walking up the steps to the Capitol building in Des Moines. It's beautiful. There's so much gold in this Capitol building. It's gorgeous, gorgeous building. And I think, but it's surrounded by all these memorials to the Union. And I had asked the guide, and I said, I've been to a lot of places for Civil War, but I gotta say, you guys really, for the Grand Army of the Republic, you really have a lot for the Civil War. And she explained that's why. It's because Iowa, of any of the states in the Union, over 50% of the men went in, which is the highest percentage of men from any state going into the Union Army. So they might not have the largest amount of men by state number, by volume, but as far as Iowa is concerned and the states are concerned, they sent the most percentage of men of their state. And you can imagine the draft is going on at the same time at that point. So now we've got the draft going on in World War II, right? So we've gone from this point. We're not seeing a casualty rate that we saw in the Civil War of 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, depending on what side you're in. But this is a problem, right? That we're having to draft in the first place. That's why we're getting to the point where we're at now. Let alone the casualty rates that, the U.S. has suffered in these wars. Now we're talking about drafting. If we're going to do selective service, it's going to be equal, basically. We're going to bring the women in now, and that's what's being talked about in Congress currently. The draft just needs to end.
Yes.
That's it, right? Very simply put, if we're a modern society, we shouldn't force people to go into an environment where they could be killed or injured or taken prisoner or anything else that causes casualties. So, yeah, my take on it...
Under the threat of imprisonment.
Under threat of imprisonment, right? Under
threat, and speaking of those numbers in Iowa, where you have that 50% of these men, 50%. Think about the implications of that, when those men coming home, and also culturally, there would probably be a feeling of you would have that in your family. It's like my daddy went to the war, my granddaddy went to the war. It fosters this culture of pride because you're we fought, we came back, this is in our blood. It's you get to that because it's really kind of weird. I need to find this book. I bet you'll be able to help me. I should just go to the library and ask the library. There's a book that talks about the different cultural regions of the country and where they came from and how they deal with things. So this would definitely foster that culture of American pride because you'd be like, we were in the Union, we won, we won this war, and so we've just seen that both Frank and Bob they willingly, they were not
conscripted. Yeah, they enlisted.
They willingly went in.
Right, and when you've got a culture in a state like Iowa where the legacy is we sent the most guys to the Union Army percentage per state, how high do you think that percentage for the guys in Iowa? And the women too now, because they're working at the bases and things like that. How many people in Iowa, by percentage, do you think went into World War II after the Japanese attacked? before the draft started. You know, it's an interesting comparison because if we look at it, we say, okay, if they've got that legacy number from the Civil War, you can bet they sent a lot of people into World War I. You can bet they've sent a lot of people into World War II, right? Because it's that family legacy. Well, you're going to serve, you know, and you're going to go over there. But after the initial shock wears off, right? After the whole, oh, the Japanese came and attacked us, we're going to go over there.
Yeah.
Now it's a little time after that, you know, the casualties are rolling in. The draft is going into effect, right? Because some time has now passed since we got to keep refilling the army. And this has historically been done. We got to keep sending guys in. And unfortunately, we know what's going to come. You know, if we look at the 1960s with the draft, with, you know, with Vietnam. This is a legacy, and it's not just American history. This is something coming out of the old wars, and conscription's been around for a long time. We see it going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is conscripting, you know, to fight the Russians and all of this. Drafts just need to end, just generally. I think we can be better than that moving forward, and I hope we are. I hope we can get to the point where service is all voluntary. Because if we don't want to serve a country voluntarily, you know, what are the ideals we're standing for anyway?
Any action that is forced cannot be a moral action.
Right.
It can be based in your principles or your morality. It's a force, and that always forms a rotten foundation, I think.
Right.
When you're forcing, especially under pain of death or pain of imprisonment. So yeah, the draft definitely needs to end, and I think here we can see now that they're calling they're going to call married men with children.
Yeah, into service. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if the politicians up in Washington who are making these orders were sending their own children.
Yeah, I would wonder about that statistic. It's unfortunately, you know, there's been a history of politicians making decisions about doing things that haven't been involved with the war. Some have. Certainly some have. But, you know, we want to make sure that everybody that's voting to decide these things understands the cost at the same level that the people who can't make the decision.
The people that they represent.
Yeah.
Well, so now that we have fully gone through, let's try to get back to Chester's letter.
Right. We'll try to get back. A little military history excursion here, but it's important, I think, to talk about where we are with it. Yeah.
I think that I will try and send you some pictures as you have expressed a desire for. We have never sent you any packages other than pictures. I had thought that I would like to send you a supply of quinine, and will do so if you will let me know if you really want it. We hope that you will try and be careful about exposing yourselves to the various disease hazards that you are liable to there in the tropics. It pays to be careful and follow the directions of your medical officers, as they are only a little more than able to hit the high places in matters of safety for you fellows. More people are killed by malaria than any other disease, and you can become an invalid for some time with affections of malaria and dysentery. Be careful. All of the family are well at the present time. There has been no epidemics of flu that was predicted last fall, and we are glad of it, especially with the so-called shortage of doctors here. Write soon. I would like to know how much you are making now. Sweetie and Jean will probably visit us soon. Love, Papa.
Yeah, so, and then just the general catch-up and sending. It's interesting he can send quinine.
Yes.
Right. And yeah, disease, especially in certain environments, is going to kill so many people in various conflicts and military history. Usually sickness is a huge issue. So he's concerned about that. He knows that, and he's going to try to send some relief if he can for the environment that Bob is in. So,
well, and this is something that those men are not used to.
Right.
They're not having to like protect themselves against malaria.
Yeah.
So I can see like even not to this sounds a little negative, the ignorance of these men, you know, in that environment. I can see that killing a lot more people.
Yeah, and it can't hurt to send additional supply because, you know, they're going to have quinine out there. But just for Bob to have like a personal supply, maybe there's a friend that could come into need of that or something like that. Chester's going to send what he can directly to his son. But that wraps up the letters for today. I know it's a slightly longer episode than usual, but we had some great photos and we've got a lot of excitement. And then we have a lot going on with the World War II context. So really,
episode 10. This is episode 10.
Episode 10. This is a big one.
Episode 10. That's okay. Like we can spend a little more time on episode 10.
Yep. And everybody, please like, share, and subscribe. Keep leaving reviews. Tell your family, tell your friends about this ongoing soap opera from the 1940s. It's been quite a joy, Jamie. I've had such a fun time doing this with you since we started. I think we've got just such a fun time coming up through everything else that we're going to talk about here as the story continues. So thank you to you. Thank you to our audience. Thank you to all our future audience that comes across these episodes at some later point. And that's it for today.
All right. We'll see you next Sunday.
See you next Sunday.